Hello, everyone. Welcome to CONVEX24 by VWO. So I'm really excited to be here today with Vicky. My name is Chris Gibbins. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Creative CX, and we're an experimentation consultancy dedicated to the wonderful world of experimentation and personalization. So, Vicky, tell me a little bit about your role and a bit of background.
Yeah, so I'm Vicky. I am currently the CRO manager at EasyJet. So I work across both our airline business, which is the one that kind of most people will know about, and then we also have a holidays business. So I work across both of those, leading our kind of experimentation program, the strategy around that, and all of those kind of great things within the business.
Fantastic. And I thought so that everybody knows who we're talking about, I thought I'd actually bring up the website. So, and this is what we're talking about. So this is the EasyJet website where you can book your flights, where I find myself quite regularly, actually.
Yeah, so we have we kind of have two separate websites at the moment. So this is our airline website, and then we also have a holidays dedicated website where people can book their kind of full package holidays from kind of beginning to end, hotel bags, etc., everything included in one package.
And on the flights website, you can see that you can see we've got a bit of personalization happening here, where it's remembered my last visit, and also critically, it remembers the airport I use most often, which is really handy. I don't know when I was looking at these. And then we can see all the prices. One of my favorite features is that you can see the price that it is. And,
Yeah.
I'm sure
Uh,
everyone's familiar with booking flights, etc. Amazing. And on the holidays, also in the Algarve, I see it's remembered some
you're planning a
flights
trip to
there.
Portugal, Chris.
I am. It's because I like to play golf sometimes. That's why, as you probably guessed. But this is a bit of a background in terms of the websites which you focus on optimizing and experimenting on, isn't it, Vicky?
Yeah, exactly that. So we run the program across both websites. We kind of have an overarching strategy that I look after for both websites, but then we run kind of our experimentation program on each of them slightly differently at the moment. But there's definitely a hope to bring that more and more close together as we bring the businesses closer together, basically.
And we at Creative CX, we support on the holiday side. So we support the teams on the holiday side and a little bit of support for Vicky sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
so,
Um,
so my first question is, it's like, how does experimentation work at EasyJet then?
Yeah, so we have a bit of a hybrid team, I would say, at EasyJet. So we're sort of slightly what people might imagine of a kind of COE type setup, but we're also probably slightly sort of centralized. But we actually form part of our product space. So I sit directly within the head of product's remit. So everything that we work on is directly linked to our product team, which is great for us. It means that the product team are directly invested in everything we're doing, which means when we're delivering all of these great features, the product team take those away and we can make sure that we're delivering value for the business kind of as quickly as possible. Um, they're also so invested in what we're doing, which is great. Like by having us in that place means that they kind of are involved in everything we test and they are very involved in giving the ideas and actually working with me on, they might be wanting to develop a new project, but they really want to make sure that they're doing the right thing, which is, I think a great space to be in, that they have that mindset that they want to test everything. They want to know that we're delivering value for our customers. Um, so yeah, it's a
Yeah.
it's a bit of a hybrid setup, I would say.
Yeah, so let me bring up, because I know there's a lot of talk in experimentation. We talk about it a lot in terms of the different operating models. So if we look at this, some of you may be aware of the term centralized when it comes to optimization and experimentation. And the centralized team is actually where a lot of people start, in fact. It's when it's a small team that's separated from all the other units, and then an optimization team will have every piece of resource they need to run, to do a bit of research, to do a bit of design work, to do a bit of kind of, and then to build the client-side A/B tests and get a few tests out the door. But the centralized model often has problems when it comes to it being misaligned with the rest of the business. So you'll find out that these product teams will be doing all kinds of things. They'll be building features and innovating, but they won't be A/B testing. And of course, all of us in A/B testing know how risky that is. So that's why there's been such an increase. And I know we've been helping a lot of clients to build center of excellences and to move from this model to the middle one. And there's been quite a lot of talk, I think, of center of excellences out there. And the center of excellence model is all about where the experimentation optimization team becomes more of a support function, more of an enabler. And they typically, what they do, the aim is to try to embed the actual building of A/B tests within the product teams themselves, so they're much more involved. And this is how you can really scale. This is how you can really make sure that you're totally aligned to the business objectives, to everything the product teams are doing. But it takes a lot of work, and your role as an experimenter or an optimizer becomes a bit more of an education function. You really have to, and almost selling the benefits, I think, to some of the product teams, and spending a lot of time with them more on a training and also a technical point of view. It's when you have to get the testing tool on their apps, for example, if they weren't doing app testing at the moment. And then decentralized is very unusual, actually. The challenge with decentralized, if every team are doing A/B testing in their own way, that you end up with inconsistencies, and you can end up with a bit of a, I mean, it can work, but it's quite rare for that to work. Yeah, but the other quick thing about a COE team to mention, it's also about governance as well, making sure people are following the same process. So Vicky, it's been really interesting to talk to you and find out more about the way airlines are structured, and it does sound from what you're saying that it's actually EasyJet are kind of a bit in between a centralized and a center of excellence.
Yeah, and I think the kind of the way we're set up as an actual experimentation team, we do have developers, designers, researchers all within our team, so we can be very self-sufficient. We can go and deliver these things and deliver value really quickly. We're not reliant on being sort of sucked into that product process, which I think sometimes might slow things down. We actually, by having our own functions, it means we can just go away and deliver at speed, which is a really important thing for EasyJet. We really focus on how can we do testing to get the value out there to our customers as quickly as possible. And by not having that restriction of also trying to do everything else, we then can actually move a much greater pace. And it is, where we come kind of more on the center of excellence side, is that's exactly what you were saying, that about sort of informing people and teaching them about experimentation is sort of my role a lot across the business. How do we get people to understand what experimentation can deliver, and then how do we help those teams work with us to actually kind of create those A/B tests and create the best benefits we can. I think the other thing that we've probably kind of talked about a lot is about how it also means we're not just really doing CRO in like the small sense. We are actually making big change. So being linked to that product team is really important, because if we make big page redesigns, for example, then the product team need to be completely embedded in that process and help us with how do we then deliver that out the door, because it will make a functional change on a bigger scale than just kind of a button change, for example.
And that's such an important point. And I mean, experimentation is so much more than just small optimizations. And not to belittle optimization. I mean, sometimes the tiniest changes, if they're the right changes, if they're solving a real problem, can have a big impact, as you guys know. I know you do this really well. But it's important to those bigger features, those bigger innovations. It's important to have a nice balance between small bets, small optimization bets, but also the big bets sometimes as well, because some of them may come off and you can make a real headway, get some really big uplifts to your key metrics by exploring that. But like you said, you need the product team involved to do those bigger things. So am I right in saying that you, with those, when you want to test the bigger redesigns or features, you're the expert in how to experiment, how to A/B test around those areas? Is that right? Is that where your team comes in?
Yeah, so our team will come in if we have a big kind of redesign to sort of try and make sure that we go down the right route about that and look at the research and kind of take it in the right direction to then test the right things. I think, coming before looking at optimization like this, I suppose, there could have been a world where the product owners um, just design based on hunch and then just put it live, whereas we can actually control it. Actually, the better way to do this is to test it, and maybe you want to test two variations, right? It's not always that you're
Mm.
going to have the right idea straight away. So how do we help them with the design of those elements to actually find the best wins? And I think it's great that within our team we have designers that understand experimentation as CRO, which I think sometimes is very different to a product design sometimes, and it's good to have that level of understanding of being able to kind of actually design for tests and have that kind of wild card idea that I know we talk about a lot, Chris, when we do ideation,
Yes.
like think outside the box a bit more, and don't just go straight down the expected route, I suppose would be the right phrase.
Yeah, it's human nature, isn't it, to, when you're trying to solve a problem, when you have an idea, well, um, to just go with the one solution, because you kind of get attached to it. And I know we're going to speak a bit about that later on as well, but you get attached to and then that's why ideation is so important, to move away from your first initial A/B test idea and to actually consider like wildcards, like we do at EasyJet. And of course, if you have the traffic, then you can absolutely go for ABN tests and have more
Yeah.
variations, which gives you that room for exploration. Um, so I know the other thing that's interesting when we talk about operating models and ways of working, it's like, who does the development and who does the analysis? Because in the ideal center of excellence, you've actually got the building of the tests happening within the actual product teams, which is where the AB here is in each of these product teams, and you've got the idea coming from the product teams. But in reality, there's a lot of COEs come in all different shapes and sizes, and we've worked with a few where actually the COE is still doing all the analysis of tests, but they have given the responsibility of development to the product teams, which is interesting. So they don't always trust the product teams with the analysis side. Um, but they have intentions to slowly move over to kind of handing over to a product analyst or an analyst in those teams, and it's interesting. So how does it work at the moment with EasyJet in terms of?
Yeah, so it's like, I suppose, on the airline side, which is kind of where we've got a fully in-house team. We have developers and designers, but they are directly linked to a product owner. So although they don't sit within the squad as like a day-to-day engineering function, you'd imagine, but they do work. The aim is for them to work specifically with a particular product owner so that they build that relationship and that they're working on the kind of the area for that product owner all the time, which means they're then kind of almost part of their team. It's just that we're delivering outside the code base and outside of that kind of release schedule, which would at EasyJet currently be our blocker if we were to put people into those squads. So we like to kind of, that's where the sort of mid approach happens, I guess, by having them linked to those product owners and working very closely with them, but also being self-sufficient outside of that with their designers and their analysts all within our experimentation team so that we can be self-sufficient, like I said earlier. But it definitely helps, firstly, relationship building, right? How do the developers work with that product owner and the designers to actually understand where the product's going? Because I think it's very important for a designer in experimentation to understand what's actually coming down the line on a product perspective, because
Mm.
it might influence the way that they want to go about doing specific testing. So it's important that they have that kind of link in to our product owners really directly, I guess.
And that's exactly sometimes the challenge with the centralized model on the bottom left, is when you don't have a link. I bet people in the audience have been in that situation where they have a small CRO team, and you're doing some great work to kind of get the A/B testing going and prove the concept, and you've got some ideas on the page, and then suddenly the product team launch a redesign of that page, and you need to remove it from your roadmap, and that's a perfect kind of illustration of when it's not in line with product, and one of the
Yeah.
dangers of working in a centralized way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've been in teams where that has been the case before as well. So I think that was something when I came to EasyJet, I was really pleased actually CRO was seen as a function within product, right? That's really important. And I think it makes a huge difference to what we can deliver and actually the value we can deliver because we're kind of aware of everything coming down the line, so nothing comes as a surprise. So yeah, that's a good starting point for sure.
And that's why here you've illustrated it with the by putting it right in the middle of the product
Yeah.
and everything around. Can you explain this diagram?
Yeah, so I
Oh,
guess what I was trying to get at is kind of in my mind, I was seeing us as kind of like that central piece of a puzzle. Like we are really sort of involved in the rest of the business does generally sit around us, but they do feed into us. Our ideas can come from anywhere in the business, and they do know about our team. We have a sort of great relationship with leadership team and things like that. So it's really good that we're seen as a really kind of what's the like I want to say kind of the core of the digital space. Anything within digital, 9 times out of 10 has crossed the experimentation team's path or at least been discussed with us, which is amazing because it actually shows that the leadership team are invested in what can we test. We want to test, we want to learn, we want data, and that as someone in this industry is like a great place to start. We want the business to really see us as that kind of central function and help them, and how do we actually kind of inform what we do for the rest of product, for the rest of digital, by using experimentation as that kind of starting point, that middle kind of really core piece of that puzzle. And I think it has every business driven by revenue, right? And it's great that also by being in that team and being with product, as soon as we know that there's a winner and we have a great understanding of that, it's really easy to turn that around within our space. We're always talking to
mm.
product owners. They're in all of our calls about results, which means as soon as something wins, we can take that on, we can hard code it, and we can run with that change and get the best benefit out to our customers as quickly as possible, and not kind of delay any value.
So you're not relying on tons of 100% served A/B test winners then to keep the site going. It's you can productionalize the winners pretty quickly, which I think is an sometimes that's an underestimated um, part of the process actually in terms of how valuable it is to get those relationships worked out, but so that you can get the winners launched properly into the code base because most of the tests are still client side, aren't they, in terms of
Yeah,
the work that you do?
yeah. So all of our tests at the moment are on the client side, but I think, as you said, we don't we never run an A/B test at 100%. We will never just take the winner and run it at 100%. You can imagine EasyJet as a website, the traffic we get to it, we wouldn't take that risk of running something via a tool into our website to 100% of traffic. Um, so we do have to make sure that these things are turned around as quickly as possible. And um, we've had kind of it depending on the size of the change. Obviously, that does make a difference to how long it takes to build. But usually, we can kind of get them productionized within a month to 2 months, depending on the size of it on the airline side, because the product team knew about it. They were invested in it. We've involved their developers, the product developers, from the very start of the process. So nothing comes as a surprise. And they can kind of lift and shift what we've done very quickly without kind of um, delaying the benefit of what we're delivering, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. And I know on the holiday side, one of the key factors for us to come and help you was to get that velocity up and
100%. Yeah.
actually and to drive that. And so, what is? Can I ask what your velocity is at the moment in terms of A/B testing?
Yeah. So I think we're kind of running. We've actually so on the holiday side, we're running kind of probably 10 tests a month, if not more,
Yeah.
building more than that, but running around 10. Um, And I think probably a key thing to call out is that has been a journey for us this year, right? And I think you're right, Chris. That's exactly why we worked with you guys at CCX to help us get to that velocity. We really wanted to actually start learning faster and turning things around. And I think if we're honest, at the beginning of the year, kind of early this year, we were probably only producing kind of 2 or 3 a month. So to now be at 10, only kind of, where are we, August, 7 months later, is really impressive for us, and we're really ramping up and delivering the benefit with it, which is amazing to see. The change and the step change has been really noticeable across the whole business, which is really great.
Great to hear. Yeah, and on the airline side, what is your velocity roughly?
Yeah, on the airline, we're probably around, we're not far off. I think we do about 8 to 10 a month. The difference on the airline side, I would probably say, is more the size of the tests that we're trying to run on the airline side now. We've been doing experimentation on the airline for quite a bit longer. So we've sort of got less of the kind of small changes. A lot of ours at the moment, and definitely this year, have been big kind of page changes or funnel changes, which from a development perspective take a lot more time, and therefore our velocity is sometimes slightly less because of that. That's not a negative. They're the things we should be testing, and it's great that actually we're testing those big things, as I said at the beginning. So I think it's a positive, and yeah, 8 to 10 a month for us, I would not say that's a negative anyway. Like, that's a really good place to be compared to places I've been before. So
Cool. No, it sounds fantastic. And of course, it's not for everybody out there. It's not just about velocity. It's that fine balance between velocity, but it's the quality is so important.
yeah,
And and as someone in your shoes, Vicky, I guess it's that balance, isn't it? It's kind of making sure, which we'll talk about in a bit around research and things, but it's making sure that the quality is high enough, that you're taking bigger bets, but not all. Because it's easy to increase velocity if you just do tiny little tests,
100%. Yeah.
isn't it?
And I think that's something that, since I've been at EasyJet, so I've been at EasyJet for, well, year and a half now. And I think when I first came in, there was a lot of, we want to do more. And I was trying to be really clear to like stakeholders and business that it's great to do more, but we really need to be doing the right things. So how do we make sure that we're focusing in the right areas? Because, you know, if you set an experimentation team a target of deliver 10 tests a month, I know that, you know, I could deliver that easily, but what value do you want from those tests? And that was what I was really trying to get back to the leadership team, and make sure that it's great to have their buy-in of experimentation. So how do we have their buy-in and make sure we're reporting back on the value that's delivered, and not just showing that we're kind of a turning wheel and everything's going and is going really fast, because that's not necessarily actually delivering benefit to the business. So yeah, it's definitely been something that this year has been a key thing at EasyJet. How do we focus on that value we deliver?
No, great. And actually, you mentioned a few times about the senior buy-in. I think that's always an interesting subject for people, isn't it? Because and how's it been at EasyJet compared to maybe other places in the past, or what's the
Yes.
senior buy-in like there?
Yeah, so the good thing about EasyJet is the buy-in from leadership teams is it's there. It's really strong at EasyJet. Our digital director is really invested in our experimentation team. I think that shows in the fact that this year our team has grown from 2 people to 8 people internally, and then we've moved to CCX as an actual kind of experimentation agency to give us that focus. And Ian was kind of the digital director, really kind of backed that change and wanted to push for it, which is great. You know, wanted us to actually grow this function and share the value with the rest of the business. And we share a lot of what we do with the rest of the business. So as you can imagine, EasyJet is it's not a small company on the airline side. There's a lot of there's a lot of different teams and a lot of different business areas, but we've spent a lot of time this year doing things like lunch and learns to get buy-in from other departments, because we have so many sections, and actually they could all test, and that's what we want to get across. And it's great that by having the buy-in of leadership, and also, you know, up to the kind of uh, like the board level, they've kind of understand, they see our reports, and it's great that they're kind of involved and embedded in it. We get ideas from our chief marketing officer, for example, like that. It is an understood thing across the business, which is really great.
And I think that's the next. No, that's so important. I know it's there's a lot of talk about how to influence, how to scale experimentation, how to get every team involved in this. I mean, if you like, you and I, Vicky, we know the amazing value that it can deliver. So you almost want everybody to do it, don't you? But it's not always that easy, and there are people you need to influence, and sometimes you need to try to get that senior buy-in when you don't have it already, which can be a challenge. But it's I know there's a lot of focus on that, but I do think it is really important. I think it's hard
Yeah,
to sort of scale experimentation unless you have got someone at senior level, really senior level, who's bought into it, and it's all about finding the lever really. What are they going to be interested in? Do they want to? We often talk about uh, experimentation, how it allows a company to ramp up their rate of innovation. So it's not just about
yeah,
revenue, but also we need to have a nice balance. We need to be trying new things. We can't just be copying your competitors. Otherwise, you'll just be chasing their tails all the time. How are you going to get ahead of your competitors unless you experiment in the true sense of the word, which is taking some risks
yeah.
and to solve those problems? So I think that senior buy-in is incredibly important. You also mentioned, where do the ideas come from? Because that's
Yes.
an interesting subject, isn't it, for everybody? I think.
Um, yeah. So our ideas, they we've done a lot of work to get ideas from anywhere in the business. It doesn't matter where our idea comes from. We want all the ideas. Like there's never a bad idea. Um, what we've really pushed for is making sure those ideas have data behind them, so that there is less of exactly what you just said, Chris. Less of that. Our competitors doing this, so we should do it, and more of I've actually seen that this is a problem. I think we should go after it, and this is my hypothesis, and that's what we've really pushed for. Um, but it can be anyone in the business, and primarily we do still get most of our ideas from the product team. But as I said, because we're embedded with them, that's a really great thing in a way. Like they're invested in wanting to test everything they're looking at doing. So they want to make sure that we're involved with their next big idea that they're trying to solve for the customer, whether that be, well, in any space. So whether that's in our post-booking space, where customers are trying to self-serve, or whether that's in our actual booking funnel to drive business revenue, I guess.
Yeah, no, great. No, it's a fascinating subject, isn't it? Because it sounds like the product team are using experimentation as risk mitigation as
Hmm.
part of it, to test everything they're doing. But also now they're doing a bit more kind of focusing on the actual problem, aren't they? So it's almost being inspired by user research and analysis and all the tools that you have. Um, so I
Yeah.
think so. I think that leads us on quite nicely to the next subject, really, which I know is
Yeah.
quite something quite new, but it's something that's very close to our heart as well. We focus a lot on this, as you know. I'm a bit of a stuck record sometimes, probably, but
No,
but
this has been a real kind of or as you said, it's very new to us. We've only started doing this kind of, I guess, in the last couple of months, really, like properly. But we really are trying to push the business down this. What is the problem we're trying to solve? Not just multiple lists of ideas that, how do we actually start with a problem, a customer problem, very importantly, and then how do we work on ideas, and how we might have 20 or 30 hypotheses off the back of that, right? So it's how do we actually link all these things together? And I think you guys have definitely really supported us on that at CCX, and this is now how we're kind of looking to work.
and just to explain this, the real difference is, like you were saying, the traditional way, especially in optimization, CRO, was to just have that long list, but it does encourage a bit of a solution first mentality when you have a just one long list, and then you And then what we would do is many different ways, a bit like there'd be a whole list of questions at the top. Is it above the fold? Is it address? And it would have questions like, does it have data to support it? Or was an idea that came from research or data? But it was still effectively solution first. You're still almost looking backwards. The other really important thing with that, what used to happen a lot, is that people would go and find data
Mhm.
after they've had the idea, which is back to the filth bias, which is kind of forcing insights and learnings to a hypothesis, like after the fact, which we've spoken about quite a lot, that confirmation bias. And in some ways, the old traditional CRO framework almost encouraged that kind of bad behavior. Because obviously, if you love an idea, you'd want to ramp it up, wouldn't you? And then you go in analytics or you kind of any tool really, one of the UX analytics tools, and you would find something, and you can always find something to support your idea. You can always just pick and choose only the bit of data that says, yes, my idea is fantastic, we need to do that next. And of course,
Yeah,
the fun.
sorry.
I'm not sure if that actually. I mean, have you seen that happen before?
Yeah, so I think when we first started the program at EasyJet, there was kind of we had a very complex prioritization model, and it did, when I shared that with the product owners and said, the more data you have, the more likely we are to prioritize your idea, that almost created that kind of bad behavior of, here's my idea, and then they'd find the data to match, like you said, but it might be one person in one video, for example, because it was that bias, like you talk about, like they think it's a great idea, let's go and find the data, which is not the right way of doing it. I think, we don't then deliver the value, right? Because we're not actually solving a customer problem. We're just finding ideas that, aren't necessarily going to drive any change to either the business or the customer if there's not a problem there in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that's probably one of the biggest kind of things that are missed by working in that way is every opportunity in other parts of the user journey that don't get your attention. So actually, what happens is that teams end up focusing on optimizing very page level optimization, just optimizing the pages they want to optimize effectively. And actually, which is often the case, there's often a much bigger opportunity on a different step of the journey, which no one discovers. And I think one of the reasons is because they're not doing opportunity discovery, end-to-end research. So it just stays there for ages. And I bet everybody here and listening goes on these certain websites. I've been on many different websites, and then there'll be an issue, a customer problem there that'll be sat there for 1 or 2 years, and you'll go back and it's still there, and no one's discovered it. And that's probably because all the teams are just focusing on their own favorite ideas, on their own favorite parts of the website, and not doing that function to actually identify other opportunities. So I think this whole problems first prioritization relies on you doing that user research, but you need to be very open when you're doing it. You need to explore a full end-to-end journey regularly, and then you need to be open-minded about what comes up and what is discovered. And I think that's one of the most important things. And then you prioritize the size of the problem first before you get to ideate and come up with the solutions. And I think that's the key thing, isn't it? You've done the work on putting the problem statement together. You've sized it up based on how big an opportunity it is, how many people does it affect if it's a problem, and how much research you have. And then actually you can, the other thing is, this is when senior leaders can come in and have a say in what problems to go after that particular quarter, which teams are going to go after the problems. And of course, the solutions would be a mixture between optimization ideas and maybe some bigger things as well, and some redesigns, which is all fantastic. And then only then do you prioritize the solutions once you've done your ideation against them. And actually, I think it simplifies that whole second stage quite a lot, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, and I think now we can, by kind of we're we're starting with that quarterly, problem statements being the things we prioritize. And I think that will really help change the mindset as well, like across the whole business of this is not just tiny ideas anymore. Actually, we're going after quite big things, and it means that then senior leaders can have an influence on what problems do we want to solve in the next kind of 3 months or however long you might want to set it for, um, based on what our business objectives might be, because it's going to have to ladder up to business at the end of the day. So which problem statements are really going to help us not only solve the problem that we know is there for a customer, but also going to support us in our business goals longer term.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think it's this lends itself also very well when you have different product teams as well, because in some of the bigger organizations you'll have product teams responsible for different parts of the user journey. And I think that this method, in our experience with other clients, actually really lends itself well for that, because, like you say, you can assign these problems and these objectives to the different teams, depending on their capacity.
Yeah, and
Um,
I guess that's why it works for us, because we are set up in that way. We have, um, especially on the airline where things have grown so much, but we do have product teams that look after specific areas, whether that be the revenue funnel or whether it's the post-booking funnel. So it's really good, because it also means that those product managers can see that their problems are being solved and how are we going to do that, and actually really feed into those ideation sessions and hypothesis as well.
and if I move to this slide, actually, this explains really the whole process on by a timeline. So the time is going from left to right, and this explains how things are really uh, fit in to everything and to the teams and to the ways of working. So you can see here that on the top, this is what we call the opportunity discovery research, and this happens quarterly. So typically, this is like the recent ones we've done. It involves usability testing with getting really close to your actual target audience, which is always, for those who have done it, always very revealing and you get some great surprises from it, don't you?
Yeah, that's for sure.
and
um,
and then I think the critical thing is the analysis as well, which is where you start to build triangulated problem statements, because it's not just about the qualitative, it's not just about usability testing with 6 or 10 users. It's then you need to quantify the problems. So that's where we use other tools like Content Square, and to actually start to quantify and put numbers against how many people is this problem affecting, and this allows us to prioritize the problems.
yeah, and I think this is it's always, we definitely try to pull in kind of senior stakeholders into those ideation sessions where we're going to play back that research, because to your point, you do find out some really interesting stuff in there, and sometimes having those senior stakeholders in there to actually hear a customer's really struggled with a certain element of the website is really important, because we use the website every single day. We do not have the same experience as someone who's sat on their couch trying to book a flight to go to Paris for the Olympics. It's a very different experience. So actually to see a customer go through that journey, I think sometimes really helps kind of senior leaders to even buy in even more, to be able to actually really show a user struggling, has definitely been a good help for us. I think a couple of our sessions have brought out some kind of, it's painful, like you said, sometimes watching people and you think, oh, that's so easy in my head, but why are they struggling so much? But that's what's so important, because we don't see it in the same way that they do.
And it really it's I think it's also great for the teams who are going to solve the problems too, because one of the key things in this opportunity discovery research is getting a good understanding for the problem. So, for example, if you really don't understand the problem, it's quite hard to solve it effectively. And what happens is that teams will go down the road of investing tons of money and tons of resource and tons of time into designing and building something that doesn't actually solve the problem in the right way, or it doesn't even solve a problem in the first place. And then it's no surprise that you don't get a winning A/B test at the end of it. So the more understanding you can get, the greater the probability of you solving it, and effectively the higher the win rates of your whole program, and the more impact you can make to the business. So it's incredibly important, this step. Um, So
I
different.
think when you say about kind of increasing kind of win rates and things, I think that's what, we're still at a very early stage of running like this, but I'm really kind of already can see that, in a year's time when we can report back on how many of the tests that went through this process won versus the ones that used to kind of live in the old world of idea, find some data to back it up. I think it'll be really interesting to actually be able to see, though, the difference between our win rates when we've started to move more to this focused area, because I think you're right. That's exactly how we increase things like win rate, is by focusing on the right problems in the first place. So yeah, it'll be very interesting when we've got enough data behind us to kind of look into that in more detail.
Yeah, and we've done similar things with other clients who we've been running this with for a bit longer, and we can definitely see the differences and see the increase in win rates. But every client is different, so fingers crossed we'll get some amazing,
It's
interesting.
definitely looking that way at the moment. So yeah.
No, no, amazing. I thought next it might be quite interesting to focus on, like, because obviously you're doing amazing work there. Everything sounds great, really a high velocity on both teams. I mean, my goodness, there's nearly 20 A/B tests a month between holidays and airlines, which is fantastic. You've got senior buy-in, which is great. Not everybody has that, and you've got that alignment with product teams and the business units. So what are your current challenges, Vicky?
Um, I guess our biggest challenge at the moment is probably where people anywhere in the business can kind of become very invested in improving something and how they think that the best way is to improve that customer experience, or that business problem. And then sometimes kind of personal opinion and personal views can then kind of skew what actually comes out in the data, and they try to maybe um, it it kind of clouds their perception of what the data is telling them sometimes, if that makes sense.
But it's great
um
that they're passionate, though. I mean, being passionate
100%.
and actually
This is the
about
thing.
about the customer experience is amazing. That's what you
Yeah,
want, isn't it?
and exactly, and this is kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because we want everyone to be really invested in experimentation, and it is amazing. But I think what we are doing as an experimentation team is then making sure that we are presenting back very clear data, and making sure that actually we're giving the data in sort of, what's the I can't think of the right kind of
Objective
terminology for it.
way or
Yes, but yes, exactly that. So that, these are the numbers, and that doesn't mean to say that it wasn't a good idea, right? I think that's half the problem sometimes. It's how do we iterate on that, because it doesn't necessarily mean it it didn't work. That variation didn't work. It doesn't mean that what the problem that person was trying to solve isn't there. And how do we actually just adapt and then do it again? And I think sometimes it's just kind of sharing that data back in the best way to make sure that actually there isn't sort of a bias to say, oh, but it wasn't that bad. And so it's making sure that we do the right thing for the customer, basically, and take that enthusiasm, but actually use it for good. Because I don't want to lose that enthusiasm within the business for 100%. Like, it's amazing that people want to come with ideas and have such an investment into kind of what it's going to deliver, and people get really really excited by it. We run review calls after tests have run for a long enough period. I'll run a review call with some stakeholders because they really want to know how things are going. And for me, that's great. We want people invested in the program. So it's just that balance, I guess.
so to drill in a bit, it's almost, is it because they're so attached to an idea? Is it that they can't always foresee that it may not work, or is there a danger of not considering other possible ideas?
I think it's probably the latter of that, around um, being so invested in thinking that this is definitely the way to go, and not necessarily um, thinking that there might be other ways to solve the problem. And that's where, I mean, it goes back to this, right? If we start actually looking at the problem and then breaking it down, that's a better way to go, rather than look at, I think this is a solution to solve this problem. There might be 20 solutions to the problem, which is fine, and that's actually even better, right? So I think that's the key thing.
Yes, it's almost it's quite interesting, isn't it? Sometimes I've certainly been in situations where you have to almost bring up early on. So if this solution, if this A/B test, if this solution doesn't work, what should we do then? And it's actually quite a useful exercise right at the start
Mm,
to consider all the different scenarios. If it wins, if it's flat, if it loses, what's next, and then it helps you set up the A/B tests in the right way to make sure you're learning maximum amount as possible from the test as well, because you can set up metrics if it goes the other way, so you can learn more. But I think
yeah.
that's really interesting. So, how have you tried to address that challenge, or to get people thinking that it may not work, and that actually, we need to try multiple ideas? And so, what's it been like so far?
I think that's where we're kind of getting to, is around that, having the idea of, right, like we said at the beginning, where we have wild cards. Like, you don't necessarily have to have one idea and hope for the best, because we are in a really fortunate position working at EasyJet that we get a lot of traffic to both our holidays website and our airline website, and that gives us the opportunity to test multiple solutions to one hypothesis. And actually, then that maybe gets them in the mindset of, oh, maybe I should think about this slightly differently. Could, there might be other avenues to go down. But it's I think people in the teams are most definitely getting there. I think it's just about how we communicate that back and think, how do they think more outside the box? And I think getting them down this route of coming to ideation sessions and doing those sorts of things does that, because it puts you in a kind of environment where you can come up with multiple ideas. You're not just coming up with the one. And that does help to kind of broaden the horizons, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's actually the structure of the ideation sessions is so important, isn't it? I know, I've been in a few so far with EasyJet, and they've been full of energy because of, well, you've got talented people on your team, haven't you? I think from all different parts. So, but that structure you're saying is important and kind of helps to drive the right behaviors, because I mean, we're quite mean in those sessions, aren't we? Because we force people to come up with quite a lot of ideas. We
Yeah.
don't let them get away with coming up with just the one and then that's it. And I think the other thing that we always hammer home is that we only do the ideation sessions where we have really clear problem statements based on real users and real evidence. There's certainly not an ideation session where everyone goes in the room and has a brainstorm and looks at competitors to come up with their ideas. It's not like that, is it?
No, and I think by us using our kind of, obviously on the holiday side, you guys support us really well with that kind of user research before we even have these sessions, and we're starting to do that on the airline as well with our internal team. And I think it's really important that by being able to present that data back before you ideate is really important. But also, it doesn't mean that it means that then we're presenting back what we've already found, as opposed to expecting people to go away and find issues, which will always mean that people find the things that they've already thought of and go and find the data for that. So it's good that we kind of do that in the experimentation team to
So,
present the research that then they ideate on, if that makes sense.
and it's that order, isn't it? That stops that filth confirmation bias completely,
Yes,
doesn't it?
exactly.
But just the order, just from, and I suppose from you as your experimentation team, you have to own those processes, really, don't you? You have to. You're doing so much more than just kind of designing and building great experiments. It's your responsibility to set up, I guess, the whole program, to set up those ideation sessions, and to make sure the research is happening, etc. Is that an
Yeah.
important part of your role? I imagine.
Yeah, and I think we've been really pushing this year for our UX team, that initially they came in as designers, and I think we've really pushed this year to expand their remit and their skill set to actually go and do the research as well, because then it moves us away from them just designing based on the idea that's come in. They're actually the ones that are now going away, doing the research and all of that kind of really great stuff that we need within the team, and then feeding into our developers, who also sit in the ideation sessions, because developers, stakeholders, designers, everyone will have a very different view on how you might want to solve a problem, and I think that creates a really good discussion. So yeah, I think we sort of own that flow, which works quite well.
And that's such a good point, isn't it, when you say about getting the developers in those ideation sessions too and involved? It's so important because developers see the world in a different way to you and I, don't they? Probably, and they also have And we also have a great idea of like more innovative approaches when it comes to
Yeah,
the development side, what's possible. We won't always know what the leading technology or new technological solution is to a problem, and they can
yeah.
bring that as such a good angle. And I think people forget that sometimes, how important it is to bring different team members with different skills in these ideation sessions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we I you know, we I might think that, oh, I'm not going to even put that idea down because it's going to be way too technical and way too difficult. But we've had a scenario where I have done that in an ideation session, and I happened to be in a group with a developer that was like, no, that is possible. We can do that. So it does it helps kind of that um, you know everyone's going to have a different view of how something might work, but I think having all of those different teams in the room helps to create the best ideas and not just have bias around, oh, but what if we can't do that, or it stops that kind of thinking by having lots of different people in the room.
Yeah, no, great stuff. Um, Another question, actually, because we haven't talked about personalization, because of course we've got tons and tons of problems, and we've got tons of opportunities to solve, and the program is really going in terms of
Hmm.
A/B testing, experimentation. So, what are your plans for personalization? I mean, also, I know from the research we do have some very different kind of customer needs coming up, depending on whether
Yeah,
they're like families traveling, whether they're traveling for business and work, whether they're up for like holidays or city breaks or
yeah.
just a quick cheap flight somewhere. And
Y-
so, what's your plan for personalization?
Yeah, so I think we're sort of just we're trying this year to do more in the personalization space is probably the really key thing. So um, a really big focus for us at the moment, as you can imagine, is our airline business is established. It's been there for years and years and years. How do we help people that might be looking for a package actually translate into a package customer and not just book a flight only? Um, and there's a very different customer that might want a one-way flight for business to Milan versus a customer that wants to go on holiday with their family in the middle of August for 2 weeks to Corfu. So we need to make sure that the way we present our holidays offering is targeted to the right customer base. And that is something that we're really working on this year to how do we personalize the journey for customers that might be looking for a package holiday, but also how do we personalize our actual kind of browse spaces, our homepage or our destination guides to really focus in on that difference in customer type that we have now that we have a holidays business and an airline, and how do we bring those two closer together. And I think personalization is going to be a massive thing in that space. We need to make sure that we're displaying the right kind of content to the right people at the right time, and how do we split down that what we test based on what people are searching for example, and things like that.
Yeah, no, and I think the key thing you hit upon there is the difference. If there wasn't a difference in user needs and in motivations and what a particular group of people need, if there's no difference, there's no opportunity for personalization.
Mhm.
But as we all know, people have very different user needs. And I think it's nailing that difference. It's focusing in on what's the difference? What does this need for this type of user need um, varied compared to this user going for a 2 day break, for example,
Yeah,
compared to a family. And again, you use research to find out what those differences are. You don't just skip it. It's interesting in personalization because a lot of it is very it's a lot of people go very solution first, and it's just very tactical, and it's just do this like a whole list of things that the tool supports. um, but again, you need to go back to what the problem is. The problem is this completely different needs of between
yeah,
different groups, and you start there. Then the solution is delivered via personalized experience, a different journey, like you were saying. That
yeah,
mindset is incredibly important for personalization. Um, and I mean, you're doing some of it already, like the fact that the
yeah.
website has a memory at the moment. It remembers
Hmm.
my favorite, the, the airport where I travel out of. Most often, London
Yeah,
Gatwick, for example, which again shortcuts my journey. So when I go back to EasyJet, it's some of these things are defaulted, which is a type of personalization. It's kind of very
yeah.
contextual based personalization. So you're doing some of it, but it's great to hear about your future plans as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've done a lot of work. We did some testing around kind of recent searches because we know that our customers will come on the website. They might search multiple times for the same thing, but they're searching, on the train on the way to work, and then they'll go home and be with their partner and they're searching again. And we've done some work around, to your point, how do we save that in their search? They don't have to keep entering that data. We make sure that we actually make that a kind of seamless experience for the customer by having that as an easy way to search because we know that's what they've been looking for previously. And we want to do kind of more of that moving into next year for sure.
And that's whole. I mean, I would definitely recommend to people if you want to start personalization, um, look into the session continuation, is what we call it, which is like picking up from where you left off last time, especially on mobile experiences. That's such a good avenue to start working on. So if users indicate through their actions on the website that they're doing something or like to see something, the next time they come to your site, or even during that session, you default it onto that setting. It might be tabs they interact with, it might be filters if it's an e-commerce site, or
Mhm.
that type of the memory that personalization can, and it just makes your whole website a bit smarter and actually easier to use then for users.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fantastic. All great. So I thought we would wrap up with one last question, and this is whether you can. What would you advise other people in your shoes, other people in experimentation and CRO teams who want to really scale up the program and drive improvements? What advice or top tips would you share with people?
I think my biggest thing is go and get that buy-in from leadership teams, and the more you can share the great things that experimentation is doing within the business, the more you can really actually build that program and get um, move it forward. The more if you've got senior buy-in and they're interested in what you're doing, I think that's a really key thing. Um, yeah, I think that would definitely be a big thing, and it's something that I've noticed at EasyJet that has made the EasyJet CRO program so much easier than maybe places I've been before because we have that buy-in and people are really interested in what we're doing, and it helps us to scale. So yeah, that would be one of them, I think.
So it's definitely worth spending the effort in that and being creative in how you do that. And I'd say almost start with one advocate. Try to find
Mhm.
somebody in a most senior team, and show them examples, show them
Yeah.
surprising results. We've done that before, and then they it gets them out of the mode of thinking that every idea wins type of thing. There's all kinds of methods
Yeah.
like that.
And I think, we did, I think a lot of places do this, but we've started doing a which test one sort of towards the end of last year, just to show actually, it was interesting. We did it as a quiz, and it's really interesting to get some people that, you just assume that a certain variation would have actually won and been better for the customer when actually in reality it was something totally different. And it really got the business to kind of think, oh God, yeah, like this is actually really exciting, and to kind of get that buy-in. Um, so I think that is a really, really key thing to help grow it. And it's always, amazing to get more and more people involved in what you're doing because you'll deliver more benefit, I think, by the more people that kind of understand what you're doing and can really buy into it.
Great. Any other top tips?
Um, so I think the biggest thing as well is about finding a way for your CRO team to be or your team to be really closely linked to the product team and make sure that you get real buy-in from your product space. Um, we have definitely seen the benefit of being part of that kind of, as I said at the very beginning, that centralized team, but also being so intrinsically linked to product so that actually we're delivering what they need and they're seeing the benefit within the CRO space, which really helps. Um, and I think it's a great thing. The more you can kind of try to steer into that more of that COE mindset and get everyone on board, it has definitely made a difference for us at EasyJet. It's the first time I've actually had that sort of set up, and I can 100% see that it definitely a better way of working, and we can deliver on much bigger things, which is really exciting.
All right. So Vicky, one last question. What books are you reading currently?
I'm actually, this is probably a very common one for a lot of females at the moment. It's just come out as a film, so I'm actually in the middle of reading a lot of Colleen Hoover books, and It Ends With Us, which has just come out in cinemas. So that prompted me to go back to her book series, which, you know, it's a bit of a light relief when you kind of log off from work and you just want to read something that's totally removed from everything you've been doing with your day. They are definitely a good shout.
Nice. No, that's it. But actually, the two books I've just finished, the two books I've finished are Marty Kagan's Transformed, which is really, I'm a big fan of Marty Kagan, talks a lot about product. Again, it's important to understand product really well, important to understand that world so that you can really integrate experimentation into it in the most effective way. So that's a great book. And also, I've been reading Erin Weagle's Design for Impact book, which I've almost finished as well. She gave me a nice signed copy when I was at the last conference, which is fantastic. So yeah, those are the two ones, but very work related. Oh, I need to
Yeah,
take a leaf out of your book, Vicky, and
yeah, switch off,
get
Chris.
switch off a bit. I know that's a problem I have sometimes. I think that's been an amazing session. I'd just like to say a massive thank you, Vicky. It's so inspiring actually to listen to you and listen to all the great work that you've achieved at EasyJet, and also actually just to hear a bit more about just to hear the positives of such kind of an innovative company like EasyJet in terms of their adoption of experimentation, about listening to their customers and really driving innovation through. So yeah, it's been a lot of
Yeah,
fun talking to you as always.
yeah. Thank you very much. It's been great.